meeting, and we'll go straight to, yes, please.
Whakataka te hau ke te ruru. Whakataka te hau ke te tonga. Ia mā kina ke uta. Kia mā taratara ke tai. Ia he aki ana te atakura, te teo, he hoka, he hohu, te hei mauri ora.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We've got the health and safety statement on page 7. I think there's no new persons in the room. We've had that before, so we'll take that as read. Moving then to apologies. Can you, Mr. Democracy? Can we have the apologies, what you've got? That all, is it?
It's it.
Okay, so we've got Brendan Ball for lateness and Craig Graham, who is overseas. I'll move those. Someone second. Yeah. Thank you, Sid. Sorry. All in favour? All right. Confirmation of the agenda. Has anyone got any items that they wish to have either brought forward or added to the agenda? No. We'll confirm the meeting agenda then. Any disclosure? Sorry? I'll move it then. Thank you, Robbie. All in favour? Aye. Aye, carried. Someone keeps us honest. Disclosures of interest. Anyone got any disclosures of interest they'd like to move that they haven't previously disclosed? There have been none. We'll move forward. General items. Confirmation of the minutes on page 9 of the last meeting. Moved there by Maxine and Robbie. Is there any discussion on the previous minutes? There been no discussion. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Chair's report. Josh. Pages out 14. 14, yep. Okay, so just a few issues, and I'll tell you, the staff were a little concerned when I asked for this, as to what might be said. So just to remind, the first item, just to remind people that if you've got matters of operational issues and the likes, get them through to staff as early as you can. If there's other issues that you wish to discuss, I'll just mention that recently Matthew, Mike and Trevor wrote a paper and sent it through to me, which I then shared with Robbie and Greg Ryan, our director. And we were able to put some time and effort into responding to those questions, and we're able to deliver that back. And that gave rise to another couple of clarification issues. But I really encourage you, if there are issues that you think that need a little more discussion or thought, encourage you to put that in writing and get it through to us so that we can deal with it. A couple of 3 of those issues that were raised are coming up throughout the meeting. However, I thought it was a great use of their time and our time rather than just raising it. This is not the forum to have those sort of things raised and trying to answer at the time. So just thanks to that. Just also mentioning that there is a review, which I will talk more about. I've got some words to talk about at the time. But at 11 o'clock, we're going to go to a break and bring in the 2 persons who are leading the ICM review that's taking place at the moment, which we understand they are hoping to deliver the report to the Chief Executive in about a month or so. So we'll be stopping for an hour. We will be asking staff to leave the room during that time, so that any committee member will be invited to stay because it's about those issues. So looking at you, the likes of Michelle and Maxine, and yeah, you're free to stay. So it's what feedback we want to give. And just, I'm going to do this at the start of the meeting. so that we can have fun through the meeting. So as many of you know, Sarah, sitting over here, has chosen to leave and go to the go to the dark side to manage Three Waters in the Taupo District Council. And I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but Sarah's been with us for 7 years. And I look back in my time, I've been involved with drainage and Sarah coming out and some people said to me, who is this young woman? What does she know about drains and whatever? I think, Sarah, you've proved them wrong quite well. So I know there's been a number of occasions throughout the last few weeks that people have spoken and thanked you very much. I just want to reiterate that again, but I'm going to invite now Trevor and I think Mike on behalf of the landowners in the Lower Waikato to say a few words. Thank you.
Hold the spotlight, unfortunately, and up the arc there. So, but yeah, we very much appreciated your effort, and as I said to you, no, and Sarah was leaving at the time. Instead of me nominating Cece, we could have made it Sarah Leland, and it might have went through because I know that was your baby. So look, we appreciate everything and wish you very, very well in the future. So I brought you a little, just a reminder of the North Waikato people, the grumpy old buggers. All this produce is made in Tikawata. So on here it's a ginger jam, and they're sort of all odd ones a bit. And there's one little one here, just to remind you of Jim Common. Hold up there. I think Matthew had something to say.
Montage
to remind. We hope she'll put it on a wall to remind her of us. And what it does is it shows the mangatawhiri. This picture here is the mangatawhiri when it was in flax. That's days when they were harvesting flax. These two pictures represent the days when we were developing the swamp. This green grass is the picture of mangatawhiri today, and this picture with the cow and that in the background to show what land was like 1970s, just before the development.
That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I can genuinely say, you guys have put me through. That's for sure.
It's been polite.
But, like I do have a hell of a great group of guys. Not a lot of Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we go to the issues and actions, which I think mover and second. Okay, mover and second for that. I'll move the report then. Thank you, Robbie. All in favour? Against? Carried. So we go to the issues and actions report. And is this you, Sarah? It's you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we'll take the report as read. Thanks, Sarah, for providing some updated commentary in the table. and open to the committee on any further questions for clarification. Unless, Sarah, you had anything further to add?
No, there will be some matters come up. So someone move that report be received. Thanks, Campbell and Mike. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. Work program report. Now, this is a biggie. So we'll just take it perhaps in sections.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So just as a bit of a brief introduction, so this is the capture of all the work completed for the 23-24 financial year. So I might ask, Sarah just comes up to the top of the table. She's not quite finished at the Regional Council yet, still got a few hours to go. So I just want to acknowledge the, from a staff perspective, the contribution that Sarah has made to the Lower Waikato zone, which has been testament to her skills across a lot of spectrums, the governance, the operations, the capital program, and also the stakeholder and iwi relationships. So today's report, is a pleasure to present to you. It's going to be a bit of a tag team approach, Mr. Chairman. So obviously, Sarah will kick it off shortly. Just want to acknowledge Ruben, the contributor to the report too, from a land drainage perspective. He's got an update, and we've also got Brendan and Bill here from the Northgate team just to help with the presentation as required for any questions. So I'll hand it over to you, Sarah, if you want to run through a couple of slides.
So Sarah, just confirming it is your last day, isn't it? Yeah. It's not an open invitation, guys.
Hey, thank you. So I've just captured a few sort of high-level points on the presentation, but I think as we move through, if you have any specific questions, then please ask. I've tried to order them in the same way as the agenda is. So starting off from page 19, part 1, there's a summary there of the operational program and budget. So overall, we had a high level of delivery over the last financial year. The OPEX spend was 87% spent, with 6.3 million of 7.2 million spent. There's a number of budget variances and reasons for that, and that's outlined on page 19 from 11A to K. And then the budget carryovers are also outlined there from page 20, A to F. Then the capital work program was 77% spent, so there was a budget of 11.8 million and 9 million of that was spent. Page 20 and 21, points 13 to 16 has some further detail on that. So any questions there before I move on to the next slide?
I hope you've all read it because it's a very comprehensive report. No, it's
Okay.
move on.
So Kānoa funding, Council have been really fortunate to have confirmed funding of 8.75 million for the Lower Waikato zone. And there's a summary there of the projects that we've got funding for. So we've got 5.22 million towards Lower Waikato Stop Bank upgrades. We've got the Island Block Pump Station.
Page 21 for those looking for it.
Thank you, Noel. And a contribution of 1.7 for the Island Block Pump Station. We've got Mangatau Compartment 3 Pump Station with a new inlet and sluice gate, and we've got $324,000 of funding towards that. And then lastly, we've got the upgrade of, it's more than several floodgates. It's a large amount of floodgates with a contribution of $1.2 million toward the total budget of $2.4 million. And just wanted to note, I know our funding can be a bit confusing sometimes, but the funding that we receive from Kānoa basically offsets the Lower Waikato Capital Renewal Funding Reserve. And so that reduces the loan funding and then therefore the debt repayments and interest costs. So whilst there's some specific projects that we have to deliver, such as those which are listed there, it benefits all flood protection beneficiaries. So it doesn't mean if your project's not one of those projects listed that you have less benefit than those who are in an area where they receive funding. And that's just the way the capital budgets are set up for the zone. So just check if there's any questions on that before we move on.
Yeah, so when this got announced straight away, I thought, do we get a rate reduction? Because this is a whole lot of capital has gone in that the ratepayers are no longer, or the targeted ratepayers no longer have to put forward. And it wasn't, from what I understand, it's not budgeted. So therefore, if it's not budgeted, and it's like, it's not free money because there's no such thing. But does that then mean that going forward, we'll have a reduction in our targeted rate? Because we've got a whole lot of money coming in and yeah.
Good question, Chris. It ends up being that there's a reduction in debt repayment and interest payments. So for Lower Waikato Zone, the capital reserve is currently, I think, got a debt of probably about $10 million. And that, there's a number of reasons for that. We've obviously got a lot of aging infrastructure. We've taken on assets from, like Franklin District and other councils, and we haven't taken on collected depreciation with that. And it's quite typical that with assets over its life that, that there will be variation in that reserve position. So when we fund capital, we have to debt fund that capital. So with this addition, it means there's $8.75 million of debt for the zone that we don't have to loan fund, and that we don't then have interest payments on. So so the benefit then is obviously that benefits all flood protection beneficiaries who are not having to contribute to that debt repayment and interest payment.
Yeah, that's right. So the saving is going to be in interest, isn't it?
Yeah,
So you would assume that the interest will be less.
Paid for out of a pool, it no longer gets paid for, and there's no borrowings. So therefore that doesn't go up. So there is a saving on projected expenditure.
Yeah, in the future.
So that will be reforecast going forward in the budgets.
Yep.
Because if there's not borrowings, you're not having to provide for it.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So jumping right along to page 39 now, just an attachment 4 there's a table which outlines all the operational budget and the budget position per area there. And you'll see, some of the variances there were outlined earlier in the report, I think page 19, but this is the attachment which relates to that earlier information presented in the report.
Any questions on that?
So next slide, please. Right, so our capital program is in attachment 5, so that's page 40 and 41 of the reports that you've got there. So the key projects which were delivered in the 23-24 year include the Churchill East Pump Station, the Pangarehu Canal stabilisation, so that's completion of a 4-year program, and that includes rock stabilisation as well as a planting program. The Rangariri Pump Station, so work there on the rising main and inlet repair, a number of pump overhauls and floodgate upgrades, and we completed the Mary Mary mooring and dry docking for the vessel project.
Sorry, if I may just go back, my apologies. I couldn't find it earlier, so anyway, just talking about the peat shrinkage on back on 27.
Well, can we just finish what,
Oh,
have you finished this slide?
Yes, and I just note from page 27, that's the drainage component of the paper. So Ruben will present
Okay,
that
cool.
information. So I'm just covering
I'll
off
leave
the
that. Yep,
flood
yep,
protection
thank you.
related information.
Okay, come back to that.
Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So our key projects planned for the 24-25 year include the Tuakau pump station inlet upgrade, the remainder of the Rangariri pump station works being the pipe work and the outlet head wall. We've got the Mangatau compartment 4 contour drain stop bank repair. So there was some cracking and seepage which was occurring there. So we will be working on that shortly. We've got pump overhauls and motor replacements. We've got a larger number of motor replacements this year than what we've had previously. We've got floodgate upgrades. We've got the island block pump station completing the investigation and design. And then we have got the big one, completion of the vessel construction project. Any questions on any of those?
You'll cover the vessel in a minute, won't you? Yeah.
Yes.
And
Okay.
all right.
Okay. So the vessel project, so attachment 7, so that's page 43 of your agenda there. So the construction is very well advanced. It's tracking well in relation to scope, quality and costs. There is a significant time delay though of approximately 5 months, and there's a number of factors which have influenced that. They've had changes of key personnel at the shipyard, but I think the most significant factor has been just the underestimation of the time required to actually deliver on the works, and particularly the welding, the pipe work, the blast and paint. So they have issued council a new schedule for completion with a delivery date of December 2024.
And just before anyone asks, it's a fixed price contract as I understand it, and it's no increase in price.
Correct. Mm. Mm.
Carry on.
Yeah. Okay, so if we jump to the next slide, I think I've got a bit more there on the vessel. Actually, one thing I would really note as well with the later delivery, that creates some challenge for us in terms of the vessel delivery. Obviously, we need sufficient depth in the Waikato River to be able to get that vessel to its site in Mary. Obviously, over the summer months, it's not that ideal time for that. So we're just working through some options with the shipyard and as part of the, the project team as well, which includes, the vessel being stored there for a period before it is transported, looking at temporary mooring sites in the river, upstream of the, just immediately upstream of where the our mooring and dry docking site is where the shallower part of the river is. So the actual lower section of the river is, I'm sure a number of you are well aware, is actually much deeper, and we don't actually have an issue with the vessel in that section. It's when it's coming further through into the river. So we're looking at those options in terms of how we manage that. Obviously, it will be very dependent on river levels at that time of year as well, and what's happening in Lake Taupō as well.
You've got a question?
Yeah, so I wasn't here when it started, and so I just want to clarify ownership. So who owns it, and then depending on the ownership, if it's used by other organisations, do we then charge them, or are we just giving it? Yeah. So, you just explain some of that, please.
Yeah, so regional council do own the vessel fully, and we would lease that to others at, a market rate.
So it's not this committee, because it's not this committee that owns it or whatever. I don't know regional, but some of the money's come out of the targeted ratepayers, or is that not by going over our ground?
Well, Sarah, you've probably got a better handle on this, but there's been money grant from through the government. There's been Waikato River Authority.
Yep.
There's targeted rate money, and is there any other money?
Yeah. Just noting, we don't have Waikato River Authority funding towards this, but we did get we did make an application, but we haven't secured funding for that. But we did use the main channel reserve funds, which, gosh, I think it's casting my mind back a bit now. That was probably a little under a couple of million. We had 1.92 million that we received from MB, and then the remainder is funded across the main channel rate. So the main channel rate has a component of targeted ratepayers, including yourselves in this room, but it also has a much wider catchment as well, which recognises obviously the upstream inputs which come into the main channel. But there was a very, very detailed paper that I presented probably about 2 years ago, which really outlined in detail to the committee what the breakdown of those rating components were.
I know that's fine. I just didn't want a group to be paying for it and then everyone else on a free ride. And so it's sort of those that paid. Yeah.
Your
But that's all good.
councillors are on that,
Yeah.
on that page. So
Perfect. No, all good. Thank you.
Brendan.
Thank you. Sarah, sorry, just to clarify, so the vessel's still in Whangarei, and am I correct in saying that it's going to sail up around the top of the country and then back down the west coast and then come in the mouth at the port there? That's the
Correct.
plan. But you're saying that it might not be able to navigate up through the river because of draft?
Because of the delay, it was meant to have been delivered in sort of July, August months. And during that time, the river levels would have enabled easily that delivery. But now with the delay, it's taken us into the summer months. And obviously during those months, we typically have a lot lower levels in the river. And with the draft on the vessel, that creates a problem.
Okay, so will it not be able to work and navigate all parts of the river during the work season, or?
During the work season, we would be doing work when obviously there's sufficient levels in the river, but there's never been the intent to undertake work during the summer months because of, but in saying that, there are sections of the river such as, above, downstream of Mercer, where it is a lot deeper in the river. And so we are exploring, that temporary mooring could actually create a longer work season as well, and that we could work in that section of the river. And what we would look to do with the program is through understanding river depths and constraints, we'd plan our program around that. So we'd know which areas we needed to work in at which period, what times of the year where we've got greater depths and more flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
So for someone like myself, I want to see that vessel utilised over as long a period as possible within the river, and if we need to have 2 moorings, so it can work either side at different times. So we'll be working with staff to see if it can be maximised within budgets, obviously. Yeah. All right, carry on, Sarah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, Maxine. No wonder people get missed out.
He's got his blinkers on, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Pictures look amazing. Unfortunately, the delay will impact a little on potentially the mooring cost until the river is higher? How is that going to impact on the overall budget of the project?
There won't be an impact itself on the mooring. You know, like we've delivered the mooring and dry docking, but if we looked at an option of putting funding into an in-river mooring, there'd obviously be cost associated with that, but that would give us a much longer work season as well. But the other option is that we leave the vessel at the shipyard until the river depths are sufficient to bring it through. There's also maybe the option of bringing it through to Manukau, for example, harbour, and waiting for the river levels before we move it. So, I guess from our end, the key input is going to be the resources and having the right staff involved in developing that delivery plan and working with our marine engineer who's been involved throughout the project to work out what the best plan for delivery is. But we do have a number of options, and I don't see that having a significant cost on us other than our labour. I think resource going into, managing and exploring alternate options.
And that still fits within the frame of the budget?
It does, yes. So we do have sufficient budget to deliver on what we need to deliver on. And as Councillor Smith noted before, it is a fixed price contract that we're working to. And I guess without getting into specifics on the contract, the contract enables us to, I guess, has got sufficient clauses within that contract that enables us to manage cost as well.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, so just got some pictures here of the vessel at its new location. So it was originally at the main site at Heron Ship Repair, but it got a bit big for that shed. So it's been moved to a bigger shed about 500 metres down the road, which was quite an exercise. So that picture there you see where it was actually just been moved through into that new shed, and that just gives them a really good space to work off with the particularly with the sandblasting and painting of the exterior. So they've been working this far on the interior. Just move on to the next picture there. So you can see that this is the blasting and painting of the interior of the vessel. And it looks pretty incredible actually, looking at all the work that has gone into this. It's obviously a really critical part of the delivery of this vessel, as our marine engineer that we've engaged often tells me. Vessels don't corrode from the outside, they corrode from the inside. So getting the blasting and painting right is really critical, and we have actually our marine engineer located there on site, so he's inspecting this vessel daily and making sure that the quality is there. Next slide. It's
Right.
me.
Any questions before Sarah moves aside? All right, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Brendan. Is it you?
I'll just, Ruben, if you want to
Sorry,
move to the table. Yeah, we'll just provide a bit of a land drainage update on behalf of the zone to the committee, and happy to take questions along the way as well, Mr. Chairman. So
Sorry.
thanks, Ruben.
I meant Ruben.
Right.
He's going to take us back. See.
From page 21, Mr. Chairman, land drainage program overview.
Thank you, Ruben. Right-hand side. That's it.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors and Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity again to present. I guess the key thing about land drainage in our team is that we are passionate about it. We understand the need for it and understand our role in making sure that we keep our land drained and water tables so that we can produce for the nation and the region. So in saying that, it's been an active year for the teams. And just looking through up there, they've come through the budgets quite well. Slightly overspent in Akak, a lot of work delivered up there. As we go down through Franklin, Waikato, and we've got Thames Valley in as well, but that'll be a separate report to KARAKIA in a couple of weeks. So most of it has been delivered on budget for the work that's required through the area. So I guess if we go through to the next slide, that gives a bit of a pictorial. In the back of the committee reports themselves is a detailed reserve position and budget for each of the subdivisions. And if there's any information required further on that, happy to discuss that offline as well. Yeah. And provide some further information later if people require, because there is a lot of information in there. So I guess if we go to ACA, we say that we're about 117% of the budget, so slightly over budget. And that reflects more work being delivered up there, is what I'm hearing from the team. And, you know, to a certain extent, there was quite a lot of drains sprayed, a lot of drain cleaning. Gary's doing his figure 8 circuit. So the landowners see him up there routinely cleaning the drains and have some interaction with him, which is good and continues to work well, I'm hearing. Around that. The other key thing, I guess, is that the McCarthy's Bridge. So we can probably go on to the next slide. Actually, that goes through the individual subdivisions for Franklin Waikato, just as a bit of a thing there. But yeah, so McCarthy's Bridge was delivered and is now in place and operational. There's a little bit of innovation from the team there in terms of the disposal of that bridge. So the local landowner there has taken ownership of the bridge and responsibility for it. That we didn't then need to dispose of it, and he also, as part of that package, did some of the fencing. So I think it saved the project around $15,000. And legally, we're protected against any use of that bridge going further. So the team's got an eye on sort of innovation and looking at those issues as they go forward as well. Yeah, so overall, I think that, you know, the Yakak area, the work was delivered well, and I'm hearing there's good interaction with the landowners up there, you know, in terms of what work needs to be done, and the team is at the moment, I think, looking at this year's work package and if there's any scale work or erosion protection that needs to be done. So, yeah.
Sid Campbell, have you got any comments you'd like to make at this stage? So can you make sure you use the mic. Right-hand side button.
Yeah, just to let note the local landowner that took the bridge and did the fencing. He used to be part of our committee, so he's well aware of the what goes on in the area. So it's quite fitting. Yeah, no, it looks really good, doesn't it? So,
I thought it was a very efficient way of doing it. They, you know, new technology, and that the way they done it all was pretty smart.
Yeah,
the bridge is only used for our machine and spraying concrete and that. But yeah, I guess the other one, the beams under were apparently not bad, but the abutments were like it.
Yeah, and I think we give a lot of credit to Bill, who's sitting over here quietly, and the team for delivering that project well. So thank you, Bill. Okay, in terms of...
Is that about ACAC? No, well, wait to get to the subdivisions.
Okay, so in terms of, I guess, Franklin Waikato, that was sitting at about 76% of the budget. The program was well delivered, and you can see from the report there was quite a lot of work done along there as well. So happy to take questions on Franklin or Central.
Really, you want to come in, Trevor? Or, okay, we'll get to that shortly. Brendan, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ruben, just on peat shrinkage there, 0.55, is that, are we on the right part of the discussion at the moment?
Yeah, that comes up as one of the key issues around the area.
I think that comes at the end of the subdivision. Doesn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of
we'll do
towards,
that shortly.
yeah, so if we get through the subdivisions and we can look at those
Yep,
key
we'll
issues
come
of
to you.
urbanisation and peat shrinkage and self-administration, sit in there. Yeah, so in terms of that, and it's the same for Waikato Central. So that was delivered at 84% of spent of the budget and substantially delivered. And, you know, hearing that there's good relationships with the landowners, both in Franklin and in Waikato, which is a key issue, delivering and managing the land drainage plan. The eyes and ears of what we do out there is really our landowners. So keeping those contacts up and our guys talking, you know, openly and freely with the landowners is a good, you know, and you guys, Mike and Trev, you would be talking to our guys frequently. And that helps to feed into the work programs and keep us doing the work where it needs to be done, really. Yeah. Okay, so probably it's a good one that we can move on to the next slide, I think. So that's some operational photos there, but if we, Trevor, you wanted to talk about Waikari West?
Yeah, so I'm assuming June to June budget date.
Yes, yeah.
So therefore that's final. So again, so that means one, that again, getting back to the targeted rate, one's gone over and one's gone under. Is there an averaging or the scheme separate? So will there be an increase for the following year on budget? And then you said you're 84% under. So, you know, will we have a reduction or because there's a surplus of funds? So what happens with the funds? Is it pay back debt or?
Yes, so the way that the way that the target rate works for land drainage is that it can only be spent in the area where the target rate is collected. So it goes back into the reserve around that sort of time. And depending on whether workers, when they set the work program, they look at it and there's issues that come up during the year that will require funding that are possibly more, then you draw on the reserve and draw that down. So the 10-year plan, LTP was setting the budget and the rate take for the 10 years. And then I guess at the 3-year period, you can review that again. But generally that rate or that money that's not spent will go back into that subdivision pool. And if you do have an issue in the next year and you need more rate, then you can call on it again. So that's how it tends to be managed.
Okay, so we'll be able to see the trend.
There's no knee-jerk reaction.
Yep.
It's longer-term view is taken, and sometimes with seasonal issues, you don't get the work done, or look at Akak, they've done a whole lot more. So it's the long-term view of what's required. But as Ruben rightly says, that money stays within the subdivision.
Yeah, so there'll be we need to look at the trend of whether that slowly increasing or slowly decreasing. No, it's cool.
And one of the issues like on page, was it, must be 142, the budget there of all the reserve positions for Central Waikato. I've been looking through those because I used to be the chair of that subcommittee and looking at questions which I'm going to take offline as to look at whether the reserves and the expenditure are matching in about 5 subdivisions. So those are questions I've got for Ruben. So those are the sort of things that I'd be expecting the landowner reps who are looking at their own and beyond to say, you know, it looks like the reserve's getting too low or we're in deficit. Do we need to be talking about moving that up? And that's the work that Ruben and his team do every year to bring forward to the long-term plan and annual plan. So that is an ongoing issue. But that's one of the reasons why I've asked for the financials to be in for the end of the year so that you as landowners can see what those positions are. The individuals can be found, or if not, you can ask Ruben in more detail, but I don't want to get bogged down on that detail here. Okay, so Mike.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. These accounts are a little bit deceptive. That on the self-administering, there's no record of actually the funds that those self-administered schemes hold. I'm looking here at, Mary Main is showing an 1,800 deficit. And in actual fact, it's got $195,000 in the bank. And I know Churchill East is showing a $15,000 deficit, and it's actually holding funds, a large amount of funds as well. And I did actually suggest at the last meeting that because we send these records to the council, which shows our credit funds and our individual bank accounts, that they should actually flow through here, so it gives a fairer picture of what's actually happening out there, because the self-administered ones are always going to be out of kilter with the records.
And the reality is those subdivisions have to account for that money and advise the council.
Yeah.
And Matangi was another one on point that I'm familiar with. And so it's something that has been spoken about in the past, Ruben, that we need to look at better reflecting. So we need to work out a better way of doing it.
Yeah, so I think we can take that as an action that we have a look at that as part of the reporting to get it to look more consistent to see what funds are held in that area.
Yeah, and then that would account for probably one or two that I've looked at, and that would overcome the need to do any further work. All right, we'll move on. Thanks.
Again, I guess the key issue is that as part of your land drainage, you look to target spraying 100% of the drains and cleaning up to 10% of the network per year. But sometimes that means you'd look at 10%, and if only 5 or 6 or 7% of that needs cleaning, that's all you'd do. So we do rely on feedback from the landowners as to what's happening within that drainage network. It's a critical feedback loop for us. So, please make contact with our guys and then call them when things are happening. We like it and we encourage it.
All right.
Okay.
So now move on to is it Waikiri West? Is that next?
Thank you.
Or do you want to just get Ruben's comments on it before we get the question, or we're not intending to comment on that?
Oh, I do have some photos on Waikiri West to say that we did successfully get a concession put in place. We worked well with Department of Conservation to deliver it at the most cost-effective way I believe we could. So the concession was put in place and as requested, and then the drains have been cleaned, and there was just some view of the drains being cleaned. So that was done in April. There's some photos showing work there 3 months later, and we're about to go and do some more maintenance on one of the drains middle of this month. Because it's not just the drains, it's the access as well. We keep the access tracks as a legitimate part of the drainage network, but also to help manage any weed source going into the important wetlands next door. So it's a bit of a joint relationship in terms of managing our effect and of not letting weeds into the wetland, and also keeping our access there for drain cleaning in the future.
So has there been any monitoring through the winter about the effectiveness of those drains as having not been cleaned for 4 years?
I guess we leave that to the landowners and get some report back. We haven't received anything negative about that. So they have been clean. They are providing a positive outlet to the area, as far as I'm aware, Councillor.
Okay. We'll now go to Trevor then. Trevor, you've got a question. No, you've turned yourself off.
Right. Just cost-wise, on page 50 is the Waikiri West details, and so it's been a bit of a fiasco for 4 years over there, and a lot of costs have been allocated for.
So can you just check the page?
Page 50 here. 108. Sorry, we go back to these 2 pages again. And so I know, a consent with the council were in the process of organising a consent to dig the drain, and then the specifications changed and that was no longer required, but there was over $80,000 spent on the preparation of that consent. And so where do those costs lie in this page? You know, what happened was 4 years ago, the 2020, the national standard 2020 NES came in. And council decided that they couldn't clean the drain out until a consent was gained to go through a wetland. And so there was 80 odd thousand spent processing that consent. And then council changed their mind and said it's through advice from an ecologist that it's not a wetland. And so the drain could be cleaned without the consent. So, but and be seen in that process, there's a significant amount of money was spent. And where does that cost lie?
Okay. So
And compared to when you look on this page, I just, if somebody could, I don't see huge costs
So
somewhere.
where's it's those consenting costs? Okay. So we're just going to get Ruben to comment. I'm sorry.
Yes, Ruben, you
No,
wanted to.
sorry, Ruben or you.
So my understanding, so you're talking about, I think there was some consenting costs that were charged to the Lake Waikiri West program. That was from I think the monitoring from the mills that was undertaken to monitor the, I guess the
26,000.
I think it was about $26,000 that we agreed to redistribute out of the Waikiri West program. And I understand that transaction has taken place and that should be excluded from the accounts that you see today. Is that correct, Ruben?
Yeah, that's my understanding, yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
It's 80,000.
Well,
It's the
in
first time that I've heard of that figure today, Trevor.
Well, no, I've got a letter there. What happened is as I say, the cleaning of the drain was ceased because council interpreted the rules to say that they needed a separate consent to go through a wetland. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So can I just, I don't want to get bogged down on this. So the question is, there was costs over and above the 26,000 that's been taken out of Waikiri West.
Yep.
Which would equate to what? That's about 54,000 or something like that. You're saying?
It's nothing to do with the mill drain. It's
No,
just
well, yeah, but so there's about 56,000.
about 80 odd thousand.
Right, that you think was spent, and you want to know where it is because it's not reflected in this budget.
Yep.
Well, I think we haven't got, looks like the answer in front of us, so we will get that answer and get it to you.
Thank you.
And whether, I've just got a funny feeling it might have been into the overall consents budget, but
Yeah,
I don't know, so I'm not going to speculate.
Yeah, so the consent that was being sought was a consent that covered all of the areas around there. And as part of that, you needed to assess what wetlands and what weren't wetlands. And I guess we accelerated that process for Waikiri West. And now we've parked that consenting process and are looking at that as legislation comes, but also as we need to look at other trends. So yeah, there was a general consenting pot that came out of.
And that was to deal with that NES provision about
Yes.
going through wetlands.
Yes. Yep.
So that's, yeah, and with the government indicating a move to change that, there's no point in continuing that work until we actually know what we need to address. So,
Where do those costs lie?
well, that's the question that we're going to take as an action point to come back to you, because we don't know what the answer is right here and now. Well, yeah, Mike's got a question if I can. Oh, sorry, I've got Chris,
Oh,
then Brendan,
no.
then Mike.
It was just not on this exact point, but it is of discussion that came earlier. So I don't know whether you want to finish this point.
Yeah, we'll finish this point if we can.
Yep.
Well, yeah, okay. Can someone, we've got a speaking order, so we've got Chris, Brendan, Mike, Robbie, Brendan. So can we just turn your mics off and I'll come back to you. So Robbie.
Thank you. As what I understand, Trevor, is that cost was actually laid out even to the KARAKIA catchment. It wasn't, that consent was going to be, so that wasn't a consent just for Waikiri West, it was for all of the region. So that breakdown was then spread over everybody. So I think you've heard it, we're going to go and investigate, but the cost was most probably minimal against one catchment because it was spread over several catchments. So, yeah, okay.
It was because there's a- Yeah,
No,
there were-
but I
yeah,
remember the discussion,
yeah,
that's what was going on.
Yeah,
And yeah,
but,
so,
we were trying to progress Waikiri West quickly because of the issues behind it, but there was a wider issue that the consent was addressing across the region, particularly Hauraki and Lower Waikato, but that's now parked because we don't know what the rules are anymore. So you're happy with that? But, okay, so we'll come back then to Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just looking ahead for Waikari West, these drains that we're talking about, is there any issue cleaning them moving ahead? Like when you say we're parking this for now, does
Okay.
that mean that for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, are those drains allowed to be cleaned without a consent, or
Okay.
are we going to go through a process again like
Okay,
this?
so don't want to relitigate this because as councillors, we spent a huge amount of time with our landowners on this issue, and I really did appreciate the landowners. Once we understood what the issue was, and staff listened, and the chief executive got involved, things progressed rather quickly. And can I just step back a moment and say, right, there was always a consent in place to be able to clean the drain. It was just the way in which it was initially interpreted. The NPS 2020 was interpreted, and then the issue of a concession to go through Dockland was also a sidebar. So all those issues have been sorted. Going forward, we had the Minister of Conservation in the room. He was sitting where Robbie was. I was sitting next to him. And we had 2 other ministers and about 2 or 3 other MPs in the room about a month or 6 weeks ago. And the Minister of Conservation made the comment that he was pushing his department to get out there and get a return on Dockland, and that meant wherever a concession could be put in place, one was to be put in place. And I said, well, hang on a minute. This is an example of what we're dealing with, and your staff have pushed hard on that, and obviously through your direction, which is fair enough. But did you intend this to happen? Blah, 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 Waikiri West. And he said, no, it wasn't the intent to look at drainage as you've described it. So I said, well, what do we need to do? And he said, leave it with me. So in the meantime, we know of individuals who have gone down and met with him, and we are waiting to hear back. And I did tell Michelle of our discussion, and she's obviously got possibly some feedback in a moment. But the issue was he did not intend that to happen. Whether he's had a different view. He did give me his phone number to ring him if there was an issue. I haven't yet picked up the phone, but perhaps we just defer to Michelle at the moment and see if you can give us any input. Thank you. Just pull the mic down to you, please.
I just would like to just clarify the issue, I guess, and the approach. So I don't want the 2 things to get mixed up. The Minister's directive around revenue generation has nothing to do with the Waikari West concession. That was about effects management, and it predates the Minister's directive around revenue. So that was done as a land manager with our responsibilities that we have to manage that piece of land consistently, and to make sure that we had no problem with the drainage happening, that it was done in a certain way that wasn't having adverse effects on the values there. We've done that. 10-year concession is in place. It was done at a minimal cost, $580 a year, I think it comes out as. We have significantly, I personally did a large amount of the work on that concession, so it didn't go through our permissions team and cost extra money, and other staff members getting that document across the line and quickly. So yes, the Minister does want us to, bring money in, but we recognise that we're absolutely, this is not our intention, is to go out and look at drainage, look at other infrastructure and things like that. Where there is a health and safety risk, or there is a effects, yes, possibly there might be some crossover on a case-by-case basis, but we are not blanket focusing our efforts in any way on councils and drainage schemes. There are other legitimate users of conservation land that are making good money off it directly that we will be focusing our our efforts on.
Oh, thank you for, you've got a supplementary, yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for your work on that. So to clarify, so for the foreseeable future, perhaps 10 years or so, that there will be that drain and other drains in a similar situation will be allowed to be cleaned without a whole lot of unnecessary red tape.
There's nothing further for us on that drain in particular. It's good to go. Yeah, as long as we work under the management agreements that are in that concession, then yeah, we're fine.
Thank you for clarifying.
And I think sometimes we just need to step back and look at what's really intended. And yeah, Michelle, your hard work and behind the scenes, there was a lot of tension at one stage. Hopefully, we can't take those 4 years out and say, let's look back and, put it all good. It's what it was and what we've dealt with it. It's a matter of going forward in the right way. So, yeah, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you. We now have, go back to Chris, please.
It was probably on the same point it's been discussed, but it just made the statement that no one was affected with the drainage. And I just feel, I'm not sure if we're talking about this particular one or across the board, but obviously there was someone that was affected significantly by the drainage, and I just want to make that point.
And that's the discussion that I'm not going to entertain here. That's off the table. A letter has been received, or an email has been received by council about possible action, and therefore it becomes like a sub judice type approach, and councillors and staff will not comment on it, and it's inappropriate for. Yeah, I appreciate that the issue is it's offline from here. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, back to the finances of Waikiri West.
Oh, yes.
On page 111, it's showing that June 23, Waikiri had a cash reserve of 52,000, and in June 24, it had a negative of 54,000. And it doesn't show anything in there where the money went to. So just going back to where Trevor's discussion about the cost of consents and everything, I mean, there's a lot of money disappeared out of that account and doesn't show on the accounts.
Okay, so that'll go into that action point, is come back and explain it. Thank you. We've got Mike, so we'll move on then. Ruben, back to you if you've got further.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess we're down to those key issues that are facing land drainage, and one of them is urbanisation, and that's coming close to us all over the place through the area. So, we're working on that still. There's a lot of subdivision going on within the areas, and we're working closely with the district councils and our consenting teams now to understand where that is, so we can interact early rather than later, make sure we have easements in place and our drains are protected to ensure they can keep working in the future. But I guess the other thing is there are areas that we need to start looking at and putting a strategy together to start handing them back to the territorial authorities or managing them differently. And there's key areas like there's some places in Ngarawahia, Te Kowhai, around Matamata Piako, that are areas that need to be and are better off managed for an urban sort of level of service rather than a rural level of service. So that's on our radar, and we're looking at that more as we go. And I guess the other one is the self-administration. So the self-administration policy went to the ICMC committee in June. So that was endorsed and is operational. We've since then received the application for Hara, which went through to the last ICMC and was approved on the basis and the budgeting and the aspects of that are being worked on. So they go into the annual plan, and Hara self-administration will commence 1 July 2026. So in terms of that, so that's up and running and requested. And I guess that does state that the policy is operational. It's on a case-by-case basis. And so, yeah, so if anyone wants to discuss that further, happy to come and meet with the landowners in that area, go through what the policy means and what Southend administration might look like for them, risks involved in the whole gambit really. So it is on a case-by-case basis.
That was a very important point, that the landowners who met with us to help develop this policy, there was initial thoughts about restricting it to certain types of subdivisions, but that feedback came through and strongly supported through council or ICM, and so it is absolutely on a case-by-case basis. Thank you. Chris?
You know, I certainly support this urbanisation work because especially with, you know, the subdivisions, and like I think Rotorua was another one. There's a lot of work, and when the subdivision happens, it has a huge impact on farms downstream, even roads. Yeah, and can I talk about the peat shrinkage? Is that
Well,
we-
can
we're
we
gonna
come
talk
to
about
that
next?
in a minute,
Okay.
once we've heard
so,
from...
So I don't know how we get involved, or as this group gets involved in that urbanisation, because that's a major, in my point of view. And I suppose another point is, again, it's probably out of line, river catchment groups, because how does that, where does that fit in with us?
I'll get to Robbie to talk about that in a minute.
Okay, cool.
You're talking about new catchments or like the previous catchment committees?
Well, there's catchments committees, and I'm led to believe that government's now trying to fund them, and it's how the funding, and it's what influence they're going to have with all the drains and everything like that. And so
okay, well, so
yeah.
maybe
Well, I just want to bring that up. I don't know when to bring it up.
no,
So let's throw it in.
I'll deal with it then just quickly. Is that yesterday, and amongst the different levels of discussions, I can't remember, we had different meetings yesterday, but essentially council is going to look at what is best going forward, and we've got a number of advisory groups and how we manage that. So that will be part of a wider discussion within the council in the near future. So it's too early probably to respond to a question until we have that discussion. Robbie, do you want to say any more on that? Or Pamela, do you want to say any more on that? No, it's all right. It's okay. Catchment, I'm just saying that in response to the question about catchment committees, we as a council briefly discussed it yesterday, in that we're going to look at the what advisory groups and what do we need to benefit the region, the ratepayers and council going forward. So in the near future, so that we can help inform the next council if we don't do something in the interim. So did you want to comment any further on that?
So one of the standard practices each triennium is, as we get near the end of it, council will reflect on its committee structure and provide advice to the incoming council on what's worked, what hasn't worked, what structure might serve the region going forward. And so this council will do that as well. Unfortunately, no current council can bind future council as to structure. That will be the choice of the council that gets elected at election time, October of next year. But we certainly can provide advice as to what works, what has worked well this triennium. So we would certainly be putting that forward.
Yeah, the one thing we did discuss yesterday in this committee, or in the KARAKIA one, Waihaupia, is, and we'll have to discuss this as councillors, but we could make sure there's a budget for one meeting after the election, so we can, these meetings could continue, but then only for one. So that's something that we've got to sort of put out there of how do we get this group continuing to work into the future. But that was there was a discussion yesterday. Maybe the simplest way of doing that is make sure there's an operational budget for one meeting beyond this triennium. So that may be the simplest way for it to operate, for then the new council to pick up how this is going to operate from then on.
And historically,
we'll just need to get advice.
Yeah, that's right there. But that's sort of the discussion we're having yesterday. I'm not saying it's
And those of you who've been around historically, like I've been around, we used to do that up to about 6 years ago. we'd have another meeting after the training. We'd just carry on with the business of rivers and drainage, and then there'd be elections or expressions of interest. But in more recent times, there's been a cut-off at the election and wait and see what happens. So we will be working on how we manage it going forward. But we can't, we're not predetermining anything at the moment and what will transpire. But it may be that it's a recommendation to carry on and get that in and dealt with as quickly rather than the time it took this time. So anyway, I'm mindful that we're going to break at 11, so there's a little bit more to get through. Perhaps peat shrinkage, Ruben.
Yeah, so peat shrinkage is the last key issue, and I guess happy to take any questions between us to try and provide some information.
Chris, did you have a question?
You go.
Yeah, so it's who needs some criteria, like what how are we going to determine who yeah, like I suppose it's who's going to set the parameters is probably my first question.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is they're trying to develop those parameters now. So around that, and I guess the key aim of this is just to understand if there are some key issues for us, not now, but in the next 10 to 20 years, so that we can be prepared for it. The areas where we're farming are important to the region and to the nation. So any information we can gather that helps us get prepared is where I think this aims myself in terms of that.
And then one of the other points, because we're actually quite a way down this path already with some of the reports, readings paper, findings. And so how do we get involved so that we're actually part of it? We're a stakeholder, because at the moment, what I can see is that the stakeholders almost come at last. We actually want to be in there early because it's such a significant impact on the farm owners of what's going to happen. And so we need to be telling a story. It's already impacted farm prices. A lot of peat farms are struggling to sell. So there is already stuff out there. So yeah, just really encourage stakeholders to become at the beginning, not at the end. That's one of the problems. And then with that as well, part of that discussion was shrinkage is roading. Is that I know these, when we do roading, I'm a shame Eugene's not here, but when we do roading, how do we get them to lower culverts? Because that's a major. And so that needs to be in the discussion as well. And again, it comes down to territorial guys. And when they're doing maintenance, can we get the culverts lowered?
It's interesting. I dealt with that a lot at district, and Eugene is the chair of basically the infrastructure committee at Waikato District. Matangi used to have issues, or continues to have issues with road culverts being too high, and the reluctance of the district to basically lift the road and lower the culvert. There's a lot of resistance. They don't have the budgets and they don't want to do it. And having hats in both camps here, it was even more, as difficult as I could ever try and progress it. So that's an ongoing issue, which we need a better relationship with the district councils because they control the roads. We don't. As a regional council, even though they might be old drains, it passes through their asset. So, and just coming back to your first point, I will have a talk with Mike Scarsbrook and is it Justin Wyatt, the peat scientist who's is dealing with this, and express your concerns. We'll have a talk about with Robbie about stakeholder engagement, and it may even be that they provide us with something for the next workshop, what's intended.
Oh, yeah. Is you don't want to have anarchy, and as soon as you make a rule and then people don't agree with it, well, then you got problems, because then if we keep going down this path, people just say, no, we're not coming on our farm, we're no longer going to participate in these studies, which is the last thing you want.
Maybe I'm a cynic, but when this subject was first raised about the peat studies and the money that staff were asking for and whatever, I asked the director, Tracy May, is this going to lead to rules and restrictions on land use? And she said the intention is not, but that doesn't mean to say that at some future stage that actually becomes the case. So I appreciated her honesty, but the reality is watch this space. Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in principle, I have a real problem with this narrative that we've got going here. And to say that it may be that landowners will have to retire their land or whatever, or it gets returned to nature or whatever that means, I'm not sure, or that those assets are left stranded. I have a real problem with that, and I think in the Karaka catchment, fellow landowners do as well. And as you know, the councillors in the room will know that we've been trying to go down a process of getting our pumps replaced for quite some time, and now we're going into a longer consultation process, which I think some of us would agree that it's probably maybe the best thing to do. But there is no outcome out of that gives us any certainty that our land will be able to be farmed in the future. We're not even sure of that. I don't think any councillor here could give us that certainty either. So in principle, I think that the narrative needs to be changed a bit, and even the money that I think is budgeted for the peat study, there's already work that Fred Phillips has done in the Karaka, which actually says that a lot of the peat shrinkage has already happened, and now it's minimalised. So we could spend a whole lot more money finding out something that we already know and that the council already knows. So while I don't have a lot of overview of a lot of the peat areas in the Waikato, I think that to say that it's one thing to say that it may mean that land might need to be, what does it say here? May transform some land to being marginal for agricultural use. Well, that's a little bit of a, I guess that's highlighting what some of the risks are, which it was fine. But in terms of it becoming a narrative for staff at council, I actually think that needs to be changed. I think, if anything, the council should be looking about, well, what can we do to preserve the peat land and preserve the agricultural use for the future, not the other way around. Because I actually think the narrative is all wrong, but I'm a little bit sensitive to this, and I can probably appreciate that for obvious reasons. But I think if we're talking about representing all landowners of peat who may have peat on their farms, I actually think we need to be pretty careful what we do here. That would be my advice.
Absolutely, and I'm just sitting here wondering whether, for those interested within the subcommittee, and I don't know what the intentions of the two leads here, Justin and Mike, whether it's worthwhile meeting with the committee and these two. I'll take that offline because I think there's always a balance. And look, New Zealand needs feeding, and this is pretty much the food bowl of up north here. We've got different, as you well know better than me, Brendan, there's pockets around the country for different things, and the huge investment, and you're one of the biggest in this vegetable growing area. So there's a whole lot of things, whether it's climate change or whether it's sea level rise and river rises. I'm not going to get into that. It's too emotive. We've got to look at the science of it and deal with it. So if you're happy for me to explore that through staff, we can come back to you and send out an invitation if that's to go ahead.
Well, maybe for the record, maybe on point 55, maybe it needs a footnote to it to say that any further discussion on this needs to be done in direct consultation with the landowners concerned, not just as a narrative that could become something that gets a bit out of control, probably to the points Chris made earlier.
Yeah, and look, I can't answer everything that's going to happen here, but there is I understand plans afoot as to how this will happen, and I'm not the best person to speak on that. So the councils are very much aware of the concerns of landowners, as well as being able to make sure that if the investment in pumps, I don't want a stranded asset in 10 years, that an asset that's 80 to 100 years, we can get out of it. So the right thing needs to be done for as long as possible. So can we take this offline, and I'll come back to you about whether we can you're not going to get a resolution that changes this, because this is part of the narrative of the council at the moment. You know, whatever words are put down here, someone's going to pick a hole in it. I think you know me well enough that I'm not going to say, let's put you under the bus. Well, you could take a recommendation to ICM because it's not a decision.
Right.
Just clarify that with terms of reference, Mr. Democracy. We can take a recommendation to.
The terms of reference certainly would allow you to make recommendations to integrated catchment to look more closely. Integrated catchment can then pass that on to the other committees and or council for their consideration. You've also got the avenue open where we could note an action, which is somewhat more informal, but those do get passed around as well.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yeah, well, what I would propose, Mr. Chair, is that for council, not only this council, but for future councils, as Pamela alluded to earlier, we need a strategic direction for ICM. And is it going to be retreat or is it going to be adapt? Because I think that's the broad principle here. And I think I would like some support from around the table. So we need clear direction for ICM for the future from this table, that we have a choice here, and it's, do we start to retreat or do we just adapt? Because if we look at the Netherlands has been underwater for hundreds of years, and they certainly don't retreat. They've adapted, and they've built the pumping systems that keeps that country literally afloat, if you like, or out of water. So, you know, like to say that, oh no, well, we're just going to retreat because we've had a couple of meters of peat shrinkage. Well, I just think that's terrible when we're talking about thousands of hectares of highly productive land that, and you said it, we're feeding the country, not only feeding the country, but feeding the GDP of this country, which is massive. And I think some of that gets lost when we talk about, oh, well, it just gets too hard and gets a bit wishy-washy, so we just wring our hands and find a way of not doing things instead of actually doing things. So that's what I would like to do, is propose a motion that council needs to decide, is it retreat or adapt? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, one thing I have learnt being involved in this process for some time is council works on policy and works on, you know, whatever is the written word. And I think coming back to what Brendan's saying is that I don't think we give council an option. I think the opening statement, and where this whole peat thing, somewhere along the line, there's a works program or a document that the science department will be working under, and the opening statement in that project or whatever needs to clearly state what you just said. I don't mean retract or go forward. I mean the opening statement clarifies that we want to move forward as productive agricultural land. You know, what I'm saying is there's not an option, because the Mike Scarbrooks of the world and the science department need to understand that no matter what happens, this is the order of the day. And I understand that that's how they operate. There's no option. This is it. We're going to carry on producing food in this area. So whatever you come up with, fine. But that's what I'm getting at, has to be the opening statement of the whole thing.
Okay, can I just take you back? We went through a process during the LTP about this peat study, and the whole thing was laid out there. It was open to submissions. It went through a process, and it's been funded on a certain basis going forward. So that's set in place. To add to that, I'm not looking, and not suggesting you can't seek wholesale change, but the reality is, let's be real. You're not going to get wholesale change. So I think the issue is that you can either ask for absolute or ask for it to be taken into consideration as part of this project. I'm not trying to tell the subcommittee what it wants. I'm just backing up and saying this is funded under certain parameters through the LTP. If you want something to be taken note of as part of that, because it's not going to change wholesale, there's not going to be wholesale change. So let's get real. So can we give him a mic, please? We've got your names.
Not looking for wholesale change, looking for giving the team direction.
Right.
Okay.
So
because I know that unless they're given a direction, the scope comes like this, and we're not looking for that. We're looking to give them direction, to say, this is where we're going. So you either carry on with your study or you're wasting your time, but this is the ultimate thing, and that's just keep productive land producing.
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually have to stop this. We've got, to my watch, it says 2 minutes. So, and then we're going to cut to the review, and then we'll come back to this because I just don't want to close it down. So, Brendan, I'll give you the right reply just at this stage before we go to others.
Thank you. So my point earlier was probably a rhetorical question. So I don't think it is retreat, and I think council's facing a major problem if the narrative has changed from ICM being something that looks after flood protection and land drainage and all of the works associated, and it's now about something else, something like retreat. Because if it is retreat, then I think that's not what we pay our rates for. It's certainly not what we expect from council. And, I would like to see on the record that has changed. If there is something in council that's allowing us to think about retreat rather than adapt as a very broad principle. So I take your point about the long-term plan and everything else. In the long-term plan, there's $1.2 billion or something like that allocated for pump replacement in the next 10 years. Is it something like that?
Are they online? Off the top of my head, I can't remember whether it's. Sorry. No. So look, can we just? I'm going to pause the conversation, and we'll come back to it. Well, you say they're not online. Well, perhaps can you send a message to Karen to sort them out? And no, I think she gave them the same invite. Yeah, Karen said to me this morning they got the same invite. So I will formally adjourn the meeting for an hour, and we'll stop the recording.